What's up, folks? We are back for another review. Um, Big fun times. Zach's making a weird face. I'm not exactly sure what's going on.
And something's making like stomach grumble noises.
That was my son, I believe.
Wait, was that really your stomach? This is how we open the show.
Yes, 100%. 100%. I hit the start broadcast and my stomach goes, gurgle, gurgle.
So loud. You probably should go to a doctor. That should not go through the computer sound.
Well, I think it's because the microphone was very close to my chest. So I
Can
think it's why I
we
got...
just talk about your gastrointestinal system for this podcast instead?
I think it's in quite good shape. So I don't think it's actually
does
concerned.
not sound like it. It sounds like you're about to like give birth to an alien. It's gonna pop out of your
No, I eat a lot of vegetables. I think I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
I think I'll be fine. Drink a lot of water. I think I'll be okay. Let's not get all the way down this. We were here to review In the Heights, which is the film we kind of built our entire month of June around, our entire month of musicals around. And In the Heights is here. We're going to do a non-spoiler section, a spoiler section, and then a little bit of discussion at the end to talk about the implications of the film going forward, which I'll explain when we get there. Let's jump into a quick non-spoiler section. Mr. Zack Ford, if somebody said to you, should I watch In the Heights? What would you say?
Yeah, why not? What else are you doing with your life? I will say, and I wonder if the buzz gets dampened by it being on HBO because it is such a big screen movie in a lot of ways. It's just so summery. After watching it with my wife and my mom, I was like, "Did you feel like this was 2020?" Because I feel like all spring last year was just like leading up to like In the Heights starting summer. To where in my head, I was still like, "This is summer of 2020, a year off." I'm just always going to relate it to the summer that never happened. But so it almost like was nostalgic in a way. It was like getting to relive the summer that we never have. It's just positive vibes. The conflict is it's there, but it's like grounded and minimal. Although I think sometimes the direction acted of it can veer it towards like kind of melodramatic tone, but the drama itself is inherently not melodramatic in a way that's really playful. It's all I don't want to say slights, kind of a degrading word, but it's all to not the focus. The focus is the community vibes, the good feelings, the being together, and that emits great joy for me. I have issues with some of the plotting and the pacing, for sure, and I don't think the songs are all that terrific and kind of run together a little samey, but I think the direction makes it so lively. I said the tone makes it kind of charming in its way that I think is definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, I feel like my take is very similar. I think we came down in similar places. We are both enjoy In the Heights. We are not out here proclaiming this to be the best movie of the year or like some masterpiece or thing. We think it was, I think I'm very much similar to you in that it was a fun time. It's an enjoyable tone. It's got a lot of like attractive people doing some great dancing, singing some fun songs. It's a good time. It's a good time to watch. It definitely has some pacing issues. It feels too long. I don't know enough about I said this in my review, I don't know enough about the original source material to tell you what could have been cut versus what needed to stay in for like functionality. But it definitely feels like there are moments in this film where you're just like, I was so excited after that dance number, and now I am very, very bored in other moments. So yeah, it's an inconsistent but very enjoyable, very fun, very uplifting summer watch.
Yeah, hard to hate, even when you're bored. You can't like say it's bad.
No, yeah, because like even the moments I didn't enjoy were like I was not hating on them. I was just like, okay, can we skip it? Like it was the movie feels like it's gonna be so much more enjoyable in like packaged up for YouTube because there are scenes in this movie that I'm gonna want to watch 20 times, and I can just skip the stuff in between them that doesn't work as well. Because there are scenes in this movie that like you just pop them on, you'll feel happy. Like it's kind of that kind of movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's jump into our spoiler section. Anyone who has not seen the film or does not want to be spoiled for In the Heights, which is currently streaming on HBO Max and in theaters around the United States, because I do not believe it has much of a release worldwide, at least if the box office returns or anything to say, jump off. But if you're ready to dive into spoilers, let's jump into the spoiler section.
Was your dive into spoilers a joke because there's a long pool scene?
It's a great scene. It's a really great scene.
Fun scene.
It's very fun. Okay, let's. I'll say it this way. I think the performances are all good, except for one, which I think you and me are always going to grant.
I'm not sure who. Oh, is it Lin-Manuel Miranda?
We are captains of the Lin should write his musicals and stop being in them. He's always the weakest performance in his own things.
I wasn't going to go off on that because this is really just a cameo. He's barely in it. It's kind of just a bit.
Oh, I'm not going to go off on it. I just don't think he's very good even in the cameo.
I think he's fine because he just doesn't matter. So it's enjoyable, and sure, of course he's here. And I'm glad he didn't have a bigger role. And if they made this 15 years ago, it would have been starring him, but he aged out for the role. And I do want to say how much on my mind it was that I don't know how much creative control he had throughout making this. He didn't direct it. It is his play. But it does seem like they tried so hard to make Anthony Ramos like a Lin-Manuel Miranda avatar. The way he raps in this is very similar. The cadence and even the tone of the voice, but more so the fucking little beard is so Lin-Manuel Miranda-ish, and not what I was previously associated with kind of a clean cut Anthony Ramos. He just looks so much like him in this movie, and I feel like he was like, if I'm not able to be the lead, I'm going to make the person most like me to be the lead. But luckily, fortunately, Anthony Ramos has a lot more on-screen charm and just general star power. I think he's pretty terrific throughout this movie.
Yeah, he's really good.
Yeah, and he just Lin-Manuel Miranda, I said, for the most part, never knows how to really act with his face. Everything always looks low and authentic and a little staged, and he can actually emit real emotion. I think comedically when he's trying to play the awkward man in love does not always work. It's kind of cheesy and a little forced, but I think in the dance sequences, the music sequences, he's all really good. And the internal drama of where should I be, should I move, I think all works. And being the bookending narrating piece, because he has that level of charm to make that connective tissue function. I think I'm a lot happier that he is deleted out than Noah Miranda is my main take.
I think to be honest, I don't blame him for the whole acting goofy and in love thing. I think that part is just written in a way that it's literally impossible to play it, and not a way that just makes you look like a complete idiot. I do love his nephew, played by Gregory Diaz IV, who is very funny in those scenes and is clearly very talented and also just very engaging as a screen presence. Quite often you get teenagers performers who are either just stereotypes or kind of uninteresting, and he's not only an actual teenager, he's 16 years old, but he's very, very impressive throughout the film. It's a really, really solid supporting performance.
This is where I think an issue of them having to stay, as faithful as they can of the source material is. I think the most interesting drama in the movie is his storyline, but I would have to believe as Dreamers have become a more politically resonant thing that this has to be a lot added since then, because this is a 15-year-old musical or 10-year-old musical. That might not have been as strong of a component in the original source material.
They definitely are updating the references to the modern day.
Yeah.
So the musical ran in 2008 is when it ran. So clearly the references of, the vestiges of the George Bush era are not the same as something to come out post-Trump era.
Yeah.
Those are clearly very different time periods.
Yeah, the Dreamers protest is very something that exists today. And I found that so engaging. I wish they could have delved more into it, rather it more be just being a stepping stone for, the main plot. It was all just a reason for Anthony Ramos to, feel purpose back in Washington Heights, rather than really letting that kid have his true, emotional growth himself. Because I think that's definitely the most engaging drama throughout the movie.
I think this is actually one of my biggest critiques of the film is that I wish it was more inherently political. I think this movie has a real ability to make a statement, to make a message, to talk about how this is a community of Latinos who is at threat at times because of laws in our country related to immigration, related to Dreamers, related to DACA. The system of Dreamers is they thought they were secure under one administration. The next administration basically tried to kick them out. The current one is probably going back, but like, what happens in 4 years? The inherent instability of that situation. I think they had a real chance to make a political statement, and I do feel at times this movie really tones down like the politics and the actual aspects of these people's lives in favor of something more flashy but without substance, which to me really does feel like feels like a critique of the director. I find him to be very flashy but very shallow, and it's the same reason I kind of watched Crazy Rich Asians and was like, I don't get why people like this very much. Like, I thought it was very meh. And I feel like at times in the Heights, I wanted it to be more hard cutting, more edgy, and just kind of like grab a hold of these things that we know exist. Like, if you have a community that's at threat because of immigration rules and because of DACA, like, why are you never making an actual political statement? You even go to a protest and like the protest is very like, it's a screen protest. It doesn't feel like real at times. Like, I wanted a little bit like a harder edge. Like, if you're somebody like him, well, I'm blanking on this kid's name. So I'll get the character's name correct. Sonny. If you're Sonny, like, this means so much to you in your position. Like, this is not just like a cool issue story that you'd protest at. This is like life and death. This is like hugely life changing, and it feels like they don't really grasp the stakes of everything for the characters.
I will fight back against this a little bit, and specifically what you're saying about like John Chu not having a lot of political depth within his movies, and so I feel like his kind of political statement away through this, at least Crazy Rich Asians, not the Bieber documentary or G.I. Joe, but and in these two movies, his political statement is just by pure representation, which I think has a place. It's that like not all minority stories need to be about the struggle. There also could be about them living their lives and their culture and their community and their joy, and I think that's what he does. He shows underrepresented cultures and people in a way of pure light and enjoyment. And there's the DACA stuff. I think the issue maybe is you want more of it because they introduce it, because they tag it on the end. So like you tried to, but you didn't fully go in. So maybe it would have been better to avoid, even though once again I said that was probably the most engaging. But I think there's value in what John Chu is doing by not making it as political.
I would say this is my pushback on that would be very clear. It's like, you can't introduce that stuff and then kind of like go by it so quickly. That's my biggest problem with it. It's like, you're introducing the political aspects of this world, of these people's community, but you're not actually grasping it. You're not actually interrogating it. You're not actually interacting with it. If you didn't want to make a political movie, don't put the politics in it. You could have made a very fun movie about all these people just kind of existing in this neighborhood, in this community. But you made it political by bringing that stuff in, and then kind of dropped the ball by never really addressing any of the politics. It's like, Sonny is not just protesting because it's a fun issue thing to do. It's not because it's trendy or something. It's because it literally impacts his ability to go to college or drive a car ever. Like, there's like really huge impacts, and the film just kind of flips by them relatively fast in a way that I find frustrating at times.
Yeah, and similar with Nina's story as well. They like really quickly give her a moment to say why she was uncomfortable at Stanford about her being kind of profiled in a way of stealing a necklace, and I feel like that was also under engaged with and dealt with, and just kind of moved past to where she found reason to go back to Stanford.
It's a really poorly played scene because she drops this huge moment of being like, I went out to the West Coast and they basically thought I was a thief because I'm not white. And then the scene just goes straight, like, it feels really, I don't know if I'm meaning, like, it was just bad. It was a poorly played scene. Like, you cannot have your character say something that is as shocking and as kind of crazy as that and be like, because I think that the way they set up her character is that she comes off being like, oh, maybe the problem she had at Stanford was that she was struggling academically. Like, they don't necessarily set it up as there was a bigger reason that she was having a problem being there. And then so when she drops this truth bomb, like, there should have been I feel like it's weird that the other characters don't react to this at all. Like, there's no reaction being like, oh my God, that's so terrible. Like, they almost seem to expect it. And if you're gonna play it that way, then at least interrogate why your entire cast of Latinos is expecting to be profiled. That's something interesting you could have explored, or actually come to grips and like grasp the fact that you're incredibly high achiever academic. Like the idea that like I can do great academically, I can go to the top schools, and at the end of the day, the only thing matters is the color of my skin. It doesn't matter how many scholarships I won. It doesn't matter how many tests I took. It doesn't matter how good my grades are. At the end of the day, I was in a dorm room at Stanford, and the only thing that mattered was they thought the brown girl stole the necklace.
Yeah. And as far as my like minimal research has gone, so it seems like what they have cut from the play too was probably the most politically active part or
Yeah.
controversial part, which is Benny and who's her, love interest in the movie, and her dad having a lot more conflict and fighting over, and there being some, racist concepts that the Jimmy Smith's character would have about her dating a black man, and not a Latino or a Puerto Rican. I don't know if he's supposed to be Afro Latino or not. But either way, because I think the play dealt more with him being black and that being a problem with her father. So they avoided that. They didn't want to deal with these kind of inner community racist ideas, which I think would be a real interesting dynamic to explore.
My understanding is that Benny is supposed to be black because he's the one character that doesn't speak Spanish.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I think, but that also would be a really fascinating thing. That's a thing that a lot of people in immigrant communities have to deal with, which is that you come here and you build a community based around ancestry. So your community is, we are all from a part of the world. We're Cubans and we're Mexicans, and then at least dealing with the fact that the daughter is in love with and dating someone who is not from the same ethnic background at least provides some interesting discussion. And honestly, a grittier edge to this musical might have been better, because it feels at times like they pulled all the stuff that could have been really interesting and complex and just threw in a lot of like big dance numbers, which are really fun and enjoyable.
Yeah.
But they also, I think the biggest thing for me that I've been just kind of shocked with coming out of watching this was all these people giving it like 4.5 and 5 stars and being like, where does this movie get above like good? Like, it just doesn't have any astounding moment to me that goes, yeah, this is a great movie. Like, to me, it always feels like it has like really impressive dance numbers that are really fun to be in, but they're also somewhat forgettable after they happen. And then the stuff between them is a little bit underwhelming. Just kind of not as engaging as you want it to be.
And like the emotional heft is there, but it's like really easy to access and easy to like articulate emotions. There's nothing too complex about what they're doing with. And sometimes I found like a little overly angsty in the character emotions that they really want to explore, especially some of the Vanessa like stuff. I feel like I never fully even understood where her state of mind was. I feel like there was like I need to get out, but then there was like she sings in the song that our community's falling apart. And it's like, but you also want to leave. And so it's really kind of hard to understand angst sometimes, but you can still like there's this universal emotion. So like, where's the community? So I get where people connect with it. It's just never like actually complex or insightful. It's all pretty bare bones. But where I think this movie does succeed highly, and where I think sometimes people can, forgive it for some of its flaws. I wrote this in my Letterboxd review, is that I think John Chu, who you just dismissed pretty quickly, but I think he has a very valuable place as a blockbuster filmmaker. I think the visual flourish, he is really inventive with his camera, really tries to make this something interesting to look at, especially when you're talking about a stage adaptation. And we spent all last year, there's so many play adaptations talking about what is a cinematic play adaptation and how it's so hard to articulate that. Musicals usually have a little bit easier time because they're just so much more physical and kinetic in a lot of ways. It's easier to be creative with it. But he definitely made this like cinematic. Has a reason to exist outside the stage because of how explorative his camera is, and not just like the very like effects driven flourishes of the streamers like coming down to the city or them like dancing on the side of the building, even sometimes just like Unavi looking. You see his like reflection through the window while you're watching everyone dance on the outside, so you can see him like in the center, and it's really interesting framing, almost like a musical video kind of framing. But just like very engaging. That's like something. There's this like 20 moments where I was like, this could never be something you see on stage, and I'm glad I'm seeing it now. And I just why I find valuable this and Crazy Rich Asians, which I think also just has a really specific visual style, is something that I don't think a lot of other mainstream makers are making in non-action movies. For blockbusters, I mean, there's not a lot of non-action blockbusters anymore,
Mhm.
but sometimes it just seems like there's a house style in a lot of studio movies anymore, and this is not a house style. He's really trying to make this a visually engaging film. The same Crazy Rotation. So I find value in him as a blockbuster filmmaker for that, even though I don't love any of his movies. And maybe if he finds the right screenplay, I think he can have some great success. So
Yeah, no, I'm not going to argue against any of that. I actually don't think. I think he does have an interesting visual style. I think 96,000 is a pretty cool sequence where they're walking down the street talking, and they kind of use the ability of the characters to imagine stuff and then create it into thin air is a very cool moment. There's like quite a
yeah,
lot of others where it works really well. It is a gorgeous movie. It has great colors. Like we spent a lot of time talking about how like some filmmakers in other reviews have like obsessed with like being super dark and edgy. This movie is like in love with color. It loves just colors everywhere. They love just the vibrancy of colors, how beautiful colors are, how you can put different colors on different characters, and how great they look. It is a gorgeous looking movie. Again, my biggest problem with Chu has always been I just think he doesn't narratively offer very much. I think his movies look
yeah,
good, but his movies always kind of look like a really great trailer, but then I never get the meat of it that I want
yeah.
after I see the Flash.
As I said, like easily accessible emotions. It's all kind of surface level,
Yeah,
nothing deeper. Yeah,
the surface level is a really good way to describe this film. Outside of a couple moments, it is very frustratingly so surface level. You want more. Do you want to talk about cast members? Let's talk cast members. So we talked
yeah.
about Ramos.
Who's your highlights? Let's go with that. Who's
Okay,
your
I
highlight?
think there are three big highlights. Ramos is one of them.
Okay,
I think Corey Hawkins as Benny is great.
amazing. I think he's a
He's. So,
superstar. He just has that big given the right like material to work with.
I remember when he did Straight Outta Compton. I was like, I feel like
He
he
was
might be.
my favorite from that,
I was
which
like, he
was a
might be the
hot
most.
take.
He might be the most talented person in that cast. And then you look at his movies he's doing, and he's like, he just hadn't gotten anything good enough. And then he's got this,
He
and
got put in like losing like a Kong movie, like
he's got.
blockbusters that he was just playing like a bare bones generic character put into an action movie without any real characterization or something to work with. But yeah, so he hasn't gotten to dig deep, which I would
Well,
say this is digging that deep. He gets the least to work with of the four main cast members
but
as far
he's
as
great,
so
so
charming,
good. He also just has a career where like
so
he just like
so much
takes entire years
energy.
off. He just like takes entire years off in his career. Like he just it's not even that he like is getting bad projects. He just like he has literally 4 credits between this and Straight Outta Compton.
Yeah.
Although he's playing Macduff in the Tragedy of Macbeth upcoming this year.
That could be interesting. What am
Like
I
we were,
thinking? Yeah, he was in Kong Skull Island as well.
yeah, he's in the Kong Skull Island.
And he's
It's
in
a
Six Underground and another like nothing. Just you don't want to roll in a Michael Bay movie to be like dramatic.
well, especially the current day
So,
Michael Bay movie where it's like it's not even going into theaters and making money. It's like Michael Bay that goes to Netflix.
oh, he was in great in Black Klansman.
He is
And
pretty
he's
good in
good
Black
because there's
Panther.
a one scene moment, um, giving a speech but being pretty electrifying, which I think is he has a lot of energy. A lot of those action movies you said took away all that energy and made him a little more stoic. Especially like Six Underground, he was like stoic sniper dealing with his like past war tragedies.
I mean,
Um,
congratulations on remembering a character's role from Six
I watched it
Underground.
with someone recently, so
Okay,
I am proud of
congratulations.
myself. Thank you. But anyways, I think he is not that kind of performer. I think he is like a real blockbuster star, and that like he needs to have a high level energy, which is not the Dr. Dre role. He did great in that, and it wasn't a high energy one. But in this, I think because he just has like a great smile. He's like a great smile, and the way he shakes his head. He's just a really good looking guy. But also just like watching him in movies, very interesting, like physical
Yeah.
performer.
He
Um,
also has like he has the little bit of the nervous awkwardness whenever his like the woman
yeah.
who's in love with comes near them. That's actually like we said it's a little goofy with Ramos at times. With him, it's incredibly endearing because you understand that feeling like just so well. Like anyone who's ever been like interested in somebody else and gotten a little awkward near them, like really gets the Hawkins character. That's just like that's a very just typical dude. It actually, I now that you've talked about it, I'm kind of annoyed that they never gave him the subplot about like fighting with the father over the different ethnicities. Like I feel like, why would you not give? I want more of him. Give more of him. He's like
more
so
him,
good.
And who I think is another standout is Jimmy Smith. I think Jimmy Smith is real good.
I didn't include Jimmy Smith in my list mostly because I think his role is so background and like he's good in it, but I don't think that character really does anything.
I think he does. Maybe it's a lot of bias because one of the things, my like easy second points emotionally that always get me are proud parent scenes, and he gets to have the proud parent scene near the end of this, and so even though I think that Nina's storyline isn't dug as deep as it could have been, I've still like engaged in their relationship and the scenes that they had together. I still found pretty emotionally moving and powerful, and they dealt with that character. They could easily made him seem a little more like stuck in his own mind and not enough empathetic of his own daughter, but they knew how to balance out his like self-interest of wanting her to succeed with the truer like why he's interested in her going to Stanford and really want to make it best for herself, that deep down like heart of being a parent, that I think comes off great. I he doesn't really get to sing much, which maybe for the best, but I think he has the emotionally moving moments to me because he's the most like seasoned screen performer, and you can see the value in that. And that I almost kind of like missed the career he maybe could have. I feel like he's never been given the opportunity outside of television to really shine, and that's probably part of him being an actor primarily in the 90s, early 2000s, where there's less Latino roles. Going back to the power of this movie of how it's an all Latino cast, other than Corey Hawkins, giving him a chance to really shine in a dramatic role that he just maybe hasn't. Because I think he's terrific.
He's really good. My third big standout would be Olga Meredith, who plays Abuela. I think she has one of the most impressive song performances at the end when she's kind of singing the song about like, do I stay here and help these people, or do I kind of pass on to the next life? I think that's a really powerful sequence. And I think in some ways she's the character that you sort of get the most understanding of like the traditional immigrant story, the idea that like she sings about in that song, the idea like you came here because you wanted a better life and you did this and you did that. And you could have get like the idealized version from her while you get the more jaded version from Ramos. So I think sometimes it's an interesting contrast between those two characters.
I think I had some false expectations where that scene was going. That never was like, I thought it was going to be this really like emotionally heartbreaking, but it always kind of kept somewhat of an upbeatness to it. And I had just for some reason a real hard time following it for whatever reason. I think there's just so much going on. This maybe is where John True's style kind of got in the way of my ability to really like empathize with the moment, because I was so distracted by like the women in the background the whole time. So that performance never rung as deep for me as it has for other people, and I found her death like kind of very sudden and very like
I'm not going to stay
in a way for them to have some emotional movie. It didn't seem very natural to the moment. They didn't really build up to it. But
to be clear, I like the performance of the song. I think the death is very abrupt, very sudden, and sort of underplayed, and is not as emotional as it should have been. Because like you're losing the matriarch of the entire block of this entire area.
Yeah,
this should be the emotional moment of the film. And it's sad because you like her, but it's not heart-wrenching or devastating.
I think that's part of the song's fault. I don't think the song in that performance in the song are ever emotionally deep enough. I think it needs to be should have went a little more on the heart-wrenching side, more on the ballady side than that really was.
I'm not familiar with the original song, but I do wonder if they changed it. If they change it to make, I mean, potentially possible. I just think she's very good.
That should have been the like "I dream a dream" moment of this play. That it's just not.
It's valid.
Or the memories. Valid. Why is it not memories?
Because nothing should be memories.
But that's what like I was expecting. Was that kind of like really heartbreaking ballad?
Who's your other stand? Do you have any other standouts?
Yeah. So those are my main three. But I also like really enjoyed who was the beautician, and I don't have her name because I'm a Black Klansman on IMDb all of a sudden on the Corey Hawkins rabbit hole.
Oh, you're talking about the three women from the beauty salon?
I'm talking about the main beautician.
The older one, Daphne Rubin Vega, who's
thank you.
Original cast of Rent.
Okay. Yes, and is she original cast in this? Do we know that? We
I
can look
can
that
look at. I don't believe
I,
so.
my thought was the only original cast member was Olga Meredith, who I think did play
I
this
believe
role on
she's
stage.
the only cast member who is
Yeah.
returned.
Okay. Anyways,
Because one thing,
Daphne
if you go
Rubin
back and
Vega just
if
has
you,
like a real like attitude and energy and like a recognizable personality to me. I think she just has great presence and like that can easily I think come off obnoxious. I think some of the her like tagalongs, which seemed very like Cinderella evil stepsister to me, both TV actresses, recognizable TV actresses. Um, that though
yep.
they were a little cloying in a way that I feel like a performance in the wrong hands for her role could have also been a little cloying, a little catty, but I think she has the right level of small amount of pathos to add to it that you do see like her as a real person and not just this like gossip beautician in there. I found that her performance very engaging, and I love the their lead song where they get to like get everyone on the street dancing as they
Mhm.
are moving. I found a really electrifying performance as well.
So I actually like the people she's with in the beauty salon. I do agree in the first scene it is a little bit jarring. They're very much over the top, but I think they modulate as the film goes along, so they're enjoyable by like the fun, like the later on scenes. But yeah,
Yes, I agree. Once they become like, it seems like they're more ingratiated in the community, not like they're these judgmental,
yeah.
you know, um,
Stephanie
yeah.
Beecher is from like Brooklyn Nine Nine and Modern
She's
Family. Plays one
doing
of
a lot with a very little. She's trying
she's
so hard.
really and it is very if you watch Brooklyn Nine Nine and you watch this performance, it is somewhat disconcerting to watch those first couple scenes because she is so different. And then Dashka Polanco,
It's from Orange is New
Orange
Black.
New Black is the other one.
Yeah, and I feel like sometimes that Stephanie Beatrice doing so much, like put Daska Polanco in the background. She's like, I'm getting like ran all over, and I don't really have a chance because she was just doing so much. I'm not saying it's good. She's just doing a lot.
She's doing a lot, and I think as she's I think she realizes that
A
as
lot
the
of
film
fake
goes along.
works. Yeah.
There's a lot of quirks and stuff, and it gets a little bit more modulated as the film goes along. Let's talk about Leslie Grace and Melissa Barrera, who are kind of the two, I guess, co-leads of the film, almost. Well,
Yes.
I guess Ramos is the lead, but they're
They're
almost
the three main arcs
yeah.
is Usnavi, Nina, and Vanessa.
So Nina is the girl who goes to Stanford and then comes back and has to deal with like racism and profiling and like doesn't want to go back, but is also in love with Benny, but then decides to go back. I do think one of the frustrations we've already mentioned this is that this arc is a little frustrating because it feels like they don't spend enough time talking about why she wants out of Stanford, and they don't spend enough time talking about why she goes back to Stanford.
Oh yeah, that's another like I they use the Dreamers plot just to move the other characters that aren't really like aren't Sunny, not the one actually dealing with his immigration status. They use his drama just to propel her arc and Usnavi's arc, which seems a little like a misuse of that idea. Because it's all just to inspire her. I'm gonna go back and like help the Dreamers, and that solves my comparatively a lot more minor conflict of what he's dealing with.
Yeah, and I think it's part of that problem is that when you don't initially engage with the reason why she wanted to leave Stanford, you don't feel like you have to give a better reason for her going back in the first place, so that the plotline feels just underplayed. I like her in the film. I think she's good at what she's doing. My problem is not even with her performance. It's that I just think narratively they kind of failed that character.
No, I don't think she should have went back because it doesn't make sense with what they want for that character of her trying to find her community. Her finding a purpose back where she had trauma just doesn't make
Yeah,
sense to the story at all. So
like
can't,
when
I feel like they should have found a nearby
she
like
should have transferred.
way. She should have transferred and found a way for her to still find purpose. But I think this movie is doing with the idea of like, do you want to keep yourself within this community that you can see your like identity expressed, or do you get want to avoid that community changing and instead of helping it try to find yourself somewhere else. That's kind of the general theme that all the characters are fighting with all four,
Hmm.
and that's her too. So to make that more like resonant would be her finding a way to thrive within her community as they're undergoing some sort of gentrification rather
Or like
than going back to Stanford to help the Hispanic culture as a whole. I think this movie, in a lot of ways, was doing with Latino culture in a small scale, like it was specific to this community. But having her like I'm going to help the dreamers broadens that scale to what the rest of the movie was not doing.
Yeah, I feel like this it feels it just plays better if it's like, oh, I'm transferring to Princeton, I'm transferring to Yale, I'm transferring to NYU, or just like there's not an explanation for why she chooses to like willingly go back into an environment that she clearly hated and was not good for her.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
And I do think that
but her performance is good.
No, the performance is good. I think the
Yeah.
Dreamers thing is the one that's kind of even more annoying, where it's like, I think the movie works so much better when it's a personal story of this community, and then feels like it makes some kind of clumsy attempts to be like, and I will help all Latinos. You know, like that. Those moments just feel kind of goofy, and it's like, why don't you like if she'd been like, I'm going to help Sunny, that's like a personal, emotional connection that's like driving her character. Instead, she's like, and I will help all of them. It feels like a weirdly like a weird like savior moment that just doesn't.
A movie that's so community focused. It's so focused on that Washington Heights community that anything when it tries to broaden its idea, it feels artificial. Yeah.
And then we talked about how Melissa Barrera, who is the working in a beauty salon, in love with Yusnavi,
the worst plotline.
Wants to move but can't get somebody to sign for her because she doesn't make enough money. Like this plotline is, and I liked her performance. Her plotline is garbage.
They just never grab on to anything interesting or really handle with enough. It's always, and as I said, it's a little contradictory at moments of what her motivations are. Sometimes it seems like she wants out. Other times it seems like she wants to help save the community. I don't fully get, but mainly they have some of an interesting scene. Her being pretty automatically denied because of a lack of a credit card, and that's kind of like the cycle of how do you have any upward mobility if there's all these rules, kind of unfair rules and culturally unfair rules in place. But once again, just like all the other storylines, that it's dealt like as a step for her plot, but never really dealt with thematically or investigated in any way interesting. To which is her whole character then has no like real interesting emotional depth to it at all.
Her character just becomes the Usnavi love interest and nothing more. And especially her plotline about wanting to move out is really undercut by the fact that then the beauty salon has to start dealing with like very similar things. And like, but their plot is much more interesting because their plot is like, hey, we're a business is being forced out because rent is going up in this area.
I want that story.
Story feels like way more interesting. And honestly, I would rather have more Daphne Rubin Vega because I think she's just a more interesting. This is a more interesting story with a more interesting screen presence.
This is my least favorite of the four main performances as well as hers, because I think she just like writes the angst of it a little too strong.
She's very good the songs. She's very good in the songs and the dances.
Okay,
but there's definitely moments where it feels like we're not getting as much from her as like some of the other characters.
She's the character I feel like I at least understand, and she's and I say like Benny has barely nothing going on in the story, but I feel like because of Corey Hawkins' performance, I can get a read on that character a little more. He offers some insight into his brain just by his performance, and she doesn't have anything really different to offer.
Well, I think it's because her talent level as a performer is dependent on what she's given from the script and the story, so that her performance struggles because she's given kind of this boring nothing plotline. While Hawkins is so talented that he can kind of just take what's not particularly brilliant or fascinating storyline and be like, I'm going to be 3 times better than what they've given to me just on pure charisma and like talent. Let's talk about 2 other characters. I already mentioned Gregory Diaz the fourth as Sonny. I think he's very charming and very funny. He's a good performance.
Good performance, yeah.
Yeah, like also, but I feel like you deserve to call this out. Like he's a 16-year-old kid in this like large movie. That's like pretty impressive that he's able to be as engaging as he is. Like you don't have this frustration where sometimes in movies you're like, can you get the teenager off the screen? I don't want to spend time with them. Like he's an enjoyable screen presence, and I do kind of wish they delved a little bit more into his backstory because I feel like he's in some ways the most interesting character in the entire thing. And then Jimmy Smits, who plays Nina's
I already talked
dad,
about him.
he's good.
I talked about him.
No. I'm not gonna. I'm not. That's not what I was gonna say. I was gonna say I'm not gonna talk about performance. The one thing for him I don't understand is the selling the business angle. I think is a little more confusing than I think
I think it makes sense. They build up to that because there's like he just really desperate for her to go to Stanford. She lies to him about like missing the deadline, so he's just trying to find money because that's his main priority. Is not his own trajectory anymore. He's like given up, like it's reached its like peak, and she's gonna go to bigger heights than I could ever do. So his priority is to keep her in school. So he's trying to pay for college.
Yeah, but I think they also don't. I wish they dug a little bit more into her rejection of his money because she's like, I don't want you selling the whole business to put me through school. I think that plot line could have been a little bit.
She did take the money and go to school.
Well, that's the problem. Is like she has this like 12
the resolution's the issue, not the conflict. I think the resolution's just so quickly tied up.
That could have been touched on a little bit more. And again, this is kind of going back to our entire biggest critique of the film, which is that it is very surface level. It is very shallow.
Even though when the resolution is so tied up, I said it's the most emotionally moving scene because it gets to have "I'm a proud dad" and I always knew you were gonna like be better than me. The line though, like this is the moment that you have done better than me.
It's goofy. It's pretty
goofy. I like it. No, it works.
I actually don't think it works. I think it's silly.
Oh, I eat that shit up. I like parental pride.
Here's the thing. I don't think the line works, but I think it works because in some way I'll accept it because Jimmy Smits is just a legend.
And he delivers that with full pathos.
I feel like anyone else delivers that line, you literally are laughing at it. You're like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But it's Jimmy Smits.
Honestly, like I want like Jimmy Smits. I never thought about him this way, and after watching this, I like he needs to have a real like Oscar like movie. Honestly, like I do support an actor for this. I'm not against that, but that's not going to happen. But I want him to be given some real kind of Oscar potential role. I think he has a lot to deliver dramatically that he just hasn't been given the chance.
Yeah. I'll go final thoughts first, which is that I think the best parts of this is the song and dance numbers because they're the ones where you just kind of get to watch the spectacle and enjoy the spectacle. I think when it digs down into character motivations and like the more complex stuff or like even the politics, it kind of falls short. In some ways, I really wish this film had like a little bit of an edgier director who really wanted to take on those issues. I think that would have been in some ways a lot more interesting. But I enjoy what we got, even if I think it is very flawed. I will definitely be watching, the walking, the In the Heights dance number, 96,000 dance number, the pool dance number. Like I will be watching these numbers on YouTube in the upcoming months and enjoying the hell out of them. Although I don't necessarily see myself revisiting the whole film as much because it is a little bit long and definitely has some down moments.
Yeah, I don't see myself revisiting, but I also found myself kind of hoping that like John M. Chu could get like 5 more movies because I said I think there's a place for him, and I think there's something that really will click at some point. And so that's where a lot of my interest was just kind of investigating him as a director as an auteur in a way that I don't think he has really been giving that because he has like Now You See Me in G.I. Joe. People kind of will dismiss and not look at really what he's offering. And as a musical, I think I'm engaged in the performance and the dance of it all, but the songs itself, I said sometimes tend to run together, and especially like rap portions. I think Lin-Manuel Miranda just has a very specific cadence he uses in all his raps. It just sometimes causes everything to blur.
Yeah, that's fair. Before we get off of, I want to stop talking about the film for a second. I'll get rid of the spoiler thing. And I just want to talk about a couple of, this is the first one we talked about that has any larger play outside of an individual film. I know. So 2 things. One, this movie really bombed at the box office. It only made $11 million. It finished at number 2 behind A Quiet Place, was in its 3rd week. And I was looking this up, and there's a lot of discussion like, oh, is this the fault of HBO Max? But then the actual truth of the matter is, it performed like significantly worse than things that have done well in theaters. Like I believe it had less than 1 million people watched it on the first weekend compared to like 3 million for stuff like, Godzilla versus Kong.
Oh, on HBO Max, they released the numbers?
Yeah, they didn't release them, or some other service that has been releasing numbers for streaming services has been doing them. so like I don't trust the exact figures, but if you look at the trends, it's basically like this performed poorly at the box office because it also performed poorly on the streaming service versus these other releases. Like it did worse than like Mortal Kombat, it did worse than like Conjuring, it did worse than like basically every one of them. And I wanted to talk about two things. One, I think the biggest thing that tells us is just that the buzz for this movie was not as much as everyone thought. And off that, I wanted to know, what do you think that this says for any potential Oscar campaigns that this film might have had? Because I think it's really hard as a blockbuster to get nominated for Oscars if your film doesn't make money.
I almost think the Oscar campaign could be its savior. That can bring the interest and bring it back to relevance rather than losing. I don't think Oscars is always tied in the box office as we think it is, especially since most no Oscars movies are very successful,
I'm
but they're
saying
more
four
artistic.
blockbusters. Four
Yeah,
blockbusters. There's a reason that the blockbusters that we've seen in recent years are Joker and Black Panther and all these movies that have made a lot of money.
but like Green Book kind of should have like in a way been a blockbuster. It was like polished that way, and still is kind of a letdown box office wise. Or not this huge, that's really the kind of movie that will ride on audience appeal and being this crowd pleaser, and then just like not tons of people saw it like they would have expected, but it still was able to write off whatever charm people saw in that movie. So I think as long as it still pleases, the audience that just likes crowd pleasers, I think it'll be fine, even if it's not making much money. I don't know how much the voters fully look into it, and to how much money they make, but I just think what we think of blockbusters is that is the crowd pleaser effect. There's this type of people love big crowd pleasing movies, and those that usually do that very well tend to make money, and this is just a rare moment that this doesn't.
That's fair. I mean, I think my biggest two statements against that would be, I don't think it matters to the voters, but I think it does matter to the studio who is choosing to run Oscar campaigns for these things. And secondly, I would say the difference between this and Green Book is Green Book came out in November. This came out in blockbuster season. I don't know how much push HBO Warner Brothers is going to put behind this now. It kind of was not as impressive as they may have thought it would be.
But I said maybe they push for it as its rescue, as to bring, because it's going to be on the streaming site and it could bring people back if it can build up that awareness. It brings up a new level of interest. Can I say my very cynical take on why this movie didn't succeed?
Yeah.
Because 47% of America heard the word dreamers and was never going to watch this movie.
I think it is totally fair to at least broach the topic of being like, you made an entire movie full of Latinos. There is a percentage of the population that just does not give a crap about stories that are not about women.
Yeah, and when I think the preview especially played up some of the political elements that we said weren't as engaged, that this played a little more, I think, in the preview. Mm-hmm. And I think this easily could have been dismissed as like liberal propaganda by very unfair Americans, because they just see people of color and think that's a liberal white erasure movie. This is just how people think. And and that's horrible. And
yeah,
maybe it hurt it. They don't see Kong and Godzilla and things that they're going to take away the America that they used to know.
Well, I think that part of that is there definitely is a thing where if your worldview is not challenged, it's easier to go watch a dumb action movie because they never challenge your worldview. I will say the one argument against my case that this might hurt its Oscar chances is that, I don't know if you've looked recently, Warner Brothers has nothing for Oscar play right now. Like if you're looking at their stuff, like their best options might be like this or Dune. I don't think Dune is an Oscar player, if I'm being completely honest.
It'll get effect stuff. It'll be one playing the visual stuff.
I think it's like it's In the Heights or King Richard is kind of the stuff that they're probably leaning on. I think it's going to be
Dune, if it is good, will get like 5 or 6 nominations, but it'd be all technical things.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with In the Heights going forward. Does it bounce back box office? I don't think it will. I think it might just be kind of a write-off as a film that just didn't hit the way we wanted it to. And, that'll be like a good post-mortem in years to come for like what happened with In the Heights.
There's no song written for this movie, right? That wasn't in the play. So there would be no candidate.
Not believe so. I did see one critique from some film writers that the biggest problem with In the Heights was it's not a particularly famous musical. and the advertising for the film did little to reach out to people who weren't already engaged with Lynn and this movie to begin with, which I think is
I
probably a valid criticism.
I know. I thought the trailer was so successful last year, but maybe the long wait of it. Like I think its hype might have maxed out in March 2020 when the
That's
trailer
fair.
was like playing on heavy rotation, and maybe people just lost their interest by
That's
now.
fair. Um, well, we've come to the end of our review of In the Heights. Thank you everyone for watching, for listening. If you've got comments, if you've got thoughts, throw them out there. We I totally admit we're kind of a little bit in the minority right now. Who are kind of a little bit.
Like it. I think we just sound more negative because of the
Well,
comparison to how much people love it.
there are people out there who are like, "This is the best movie of the year. This is amazing. This is perfect," and
Just
we're over
like
here. We have
if you
criticisms.
if you hear me talk about this and then hear me talk about Girl in the Window, you would think I was like adored Girl in the Window so much more. But it's because sometimes when you're on the opposite end of other people, though, that kind of highlights those specific takes, makes it like a little more
Right.
emphasized.
When you're in the minority,
So
you
I would
often
say I
sound more.
probably like this more than Girl in the Window, but I'm less on the defensive end of that and more trying to give
Yeah.
a little more
Well,
forward take.
we hope you enjoyed our different take. Watch the movie, come back to us. We'll have the debate. You throw stuff in the comments. We've got letterbox reviews. You can go
Damn it!
there.
It's Woman in the Window, not Girl in the Window. I had not named this movie right fucking once.
Zach is the only
Jesus
person
Christ.
who likes this movie and simultaneously cannot name this movie's title. All right, folks, we're out. Enjoy our regularly scheduled content coming back Saturday. Enjoy more reviews. We will have one upcoming for the Pixar film Luca. You hope you enjoy that as well. Yeah. Peace out, homies.